are the proud hills of the state of Virginia in the springtime of 1956. Springtime, beckoning to a small boy, urging him to wander with the wind, to the farm perhaps, over the pasture fence to catch a calf. Not an easy thing, because after all, a calf's a youngster like himself. Ride him? Sure. Well, what's a day without a little rough and tumble? When a boy needs comfort, there's always home and mother and father. This is the world of Randy Kerr of Oakton, Virginia. Typical, except for one thing. Randy was the first child to receive an injection of Salk polio vaccine in the field trials in 1954. Much, however, had preceded this moment when Randy Kerr made history. In the all-out fight against polio led by the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, there were many years of struggle and heartbreak. Parents lived in fear of polio's sudden attack and the tragic aftermath. Thousands upon thousands of children and adults fell prey to the crippler. March of Dimes funds were needed everywhere, needed desperately by patients, needed by an army of scientists who searched for a preventive. Then in 1954, a vaccine to prevent paralytic polio, developed by Dr. Jonas Salk, a grantee of the National Foundation, was tested in the largest field trials in medical history. Finally, April 12, 1955, Salk vaccine safe, effective. The next challenge, commercial production of the polio vaccine in quantity. A huge task, a complex process, all detailed in this book. It's officially called a protocol. Here, the manufacturer records every step in the production of one lot of vaccine. The first requirement, trained scientists and technicians. Their every action is important, starting with the scrub-up. And the equipment they use gets its scrub-up too. A scalding steam bath for 15 minutes. When it comes out, it's completely sterilized, ready for the big job ahead. Vital to the production of the vaccine are monkeys from the Far East, given the best of care. Meanwhile, another basic ingredient of the polio vaccine is being prepared, a rich, nourishing liquid called medium 199. Some 68 different elements go into medium 199. Each is carefully checked, weighed, and combined according to the formula. And when all is thoroughly blended, the medium is tested for absolute sterility. Why this elaborate preparation? Into medium 199 will go monkey kidney tissue, first carefully minced by hand. In these bottles, the monkey kidney tissue grows, getting its nourishment from the rich medium 199. For 6 days, the bottles rock and the tissue grows. Then, because all the nourishment in the medium is exhausted, half is siphoned off to be replaced by fresh medium, but with a difference. The difference, a big one, is that here, for the first time, live polio virus is planted in the medium. 3 different strains of polio virus are added. The completed vaccine will protect against all 3 types of paralytic polio. And once more, the bottles rock. In 4 days, the virus, so minute yet so lethal, multiplies 250 to 1,000 times. Another stage in the complex production of vaccine has been reached. The polio virus solution is ready for harvesting. The endless testing has now begun. A titration test. It measures the amount of live virus present in the solution. This test is made 7 different times during production. Next, filtration, a vitally important process. First, the virus solution goes through these metal tubes containing porcelain filters. Then through sheets of asbestos to strain out all kidney tissue and remove any stray bacteria. More tests. Rabbits are inoculated to make sure that no B virus, a dangerous but non-polio virus, is in the solutions. Guinea pigs, too, receive injections to make certain that the solutions are free of tuberculosis bacilli. Finally, the climax of production, inactivation. The power of the polio virus to infect man will be utterly destroyed. The colorless, pungent chemical formaldehyde will deal the deadly blow to the polio virus. For 66 hours, in a warm incubator room, the inactivation process continues. Then what remains can only do good, provide humans with protection from paralytic polio. A chapter ends. The enemy of man is now ready to become his servant. At every step of the way, checks and double checks. This technician is working on a tissue culture safety test. Double check on the complete inactivation of the virus. 4 such tissue culture tests are conducted on every batch of vaccine. Behind this door, the final phase of production. It calls for a giant tank. Into it will go the 3 types of inactivated poliovirus solution, combined here for the first time. The solutions are first filtered on the way into the pooling tank and twice later. Additional chemicals complete and preserve the vaccine. For maximum protection from paralytic polio, 3 inoculations. The second given not less than 2 weeks after the first. The third not less than 7 months later. Your child or any member of your family eligible for polio vaccine in your community should be vaccinated now. Vaccination now will save lives from death or paralysis this year. Make use of increasing supplies of vaccine. Help your child grow up strong and straight, free from crippling polio. Youngsters like David Eisenhower, like polio pioneer Randy Kerr, are part of a bright new future. A future which will see the unconditional surrender of infantile paralysis. American homes and homes...
And now we want to talk about the supposed hero of inoculations and polio, Jonas Salk, the survival of the wisest. Now, this character is trumpeted by the entire globe as the hero of modern medicine, the hero of basically solving the problem of polio. But what that did was actually give everybody the impetus to get mass vaccinations. It was, in other words, it was a big selling point to push everyone into the idea that modern medicine has now achieved the radical advantage of being able to completely re-engineer man such that he won't have to deal with the old diseases that he used to have to deal with. Now, there's some truth to that. And obviously modern medicine has made all kinds of advances. I'm obviously not denying that. But this is an individual who was propped up by the establishment and funded by all the big families. Carnegie Mellon Institute actually was behind Salk. And what it did was it had the effect of convincing everyone that health requires mass vaccinations. I mean, that's pretty much like one of that, and maybe hygiene, right? These are the 2 big ideas of modern health in the 20th century. So he is thus called the father of inoculations, mass inoculations. Obviously, other people had come up with this idea, as well as Sabin, another character. But you'll notice that these characters had a very close connection to the big pharma establishment. Now, why are these characters directly connected to large private corporations? I think that's a little bit suspicious. We know about the funding of Carnegie Mellon and their radical eugenicist ideologies. But we're not just talking about eugenics and the idea of the preservation of one's race or one's culture. This is actually dysgenics, and that's what we're going to see in this book, in that Salk has gone even further and revamped his theory to supposedly improve upon Darwinism. In other words, we're not just talking Darwinism anymore. He's arguing that survival of the fittest has now become survival of the wisest. And what that means is the elite, basically incarnated in the scientific class, they now function as the arbiters of Mother Nature. This is literally what he says in this book. And as a result, they're going to have to put into place structures, systems to decide who lives and who dies and who goes into the future and who doesn't go into the future. So that's what this book is another layer of the Darwinian cult of mass depopulation. That's why he begins the book by saying the big problem that we face is too many people. Man will have to regulate and take the place of Mother Nature, because Mother Nature, he argues, has natural functions of keeping balance and regulating population through disease and death, which he says are good. He says man's going to have to step up and take on that role and do the exact same thing. So here is your psychopath Darwin cult leader basically arguing not just that. Salk says that man is X-Men. You're all a bunch of mutants. And because you're mutants, because you're Toxic Avenger, there's nothing wrong with the scientific establishment mutating you secretly through RNA viruses. Yes, he says that. This is chapter 7. Mutations, the exact same thing that we saw with Kessler, mutating man. Well, here is Salk saying that we could do all kinds of things to produce advantageous and disadvantageous effects by mutating and testing on people through their RNA, DNA, and through the eggs of reproduction. The female egg can be experimented on, and we can even, he says, introduce mass diseases, mass cancer, perhaps, through experimenting on reproductive functions in the body. Salk goes on to say that man is a product of evolution, and therefore anything that those in the scientific establishment do is also just another function of evolution. So if a bunch of scientific cult leaders kill you all and murder your babies and eat them, that's just another naturalistic process. If that were to happen, it's just natural. It's just naturalism. Why? Because death and disease and destruction are good. They're part of the dialectical evolutionary process. They produce, he argues, a new stage of man. This is why we saw Kessler say that Promethean man is cannibalistic man. In order to go to the next stage in evolution, you have to eat your own. That's what Kessler said. It's exactly what Salk says. Who stands in the way of this? Traditionalists. Traditionalists must die, page 70. The trads must die, and the elite will decide who lives and who dies. Who are the elite? Who are the wisest? Who are the wisest? The scientific class. The priestly class will decide the new values. And he says that the traditionalists must die because they're anti-evolutionary and they don't accept the evolution of morals out of right and wrong into anything. Right? Morals are part of the evolutionary process, he says. If you don't accept this, then you don't see evolution as true. You need to die. And that's because you are regressive. You're moving back towards protozoa stage, towards soup stage, towards muck stage. You're Nickelodeon Gack. We are Godmen, he says. And we as Godmen will kill all of you traditionalists. This is what he says. This is not me. I'm not making this up. You have to read this book. If you doubt me, go read this book. I promise you, you will be blown away. He even says that, what does it mean to be pro-life? It means to support evolution killing most of the population. That's truly pro-life, he says. He says because that's the only way that the species will go into the future and through transhumanism become immortal. So they're truly pro-life. But if you're pro-life in the colloquial sense, in that you want to have children and you want to see people flourish, and you oppose euthanasia and so forth, he says you're actually pro-death because you're not evolving. Then he goes into a bunch of speculations about metaphysics. By the way, that's the most extreme inquisition imaginable. I thought we were anti-dogmatic. Oh, no. You were duped. You thought that the scientific class was actually here to free you from the dogmas of superstition and religion. The new cult is going to be the most dogmatic ever, and it's going to kill anyone that doesn't adhere to it. Salk says that if you're dogmatic, he says you're an egomaniac. Oh, wait a minute. This is the most dogmatic thing ever. This cult of Salk that he talks about. The Luciferian Darwinian cult. They're going to kill everyone that doesn't join their cult, he says. That's what he wants. That's his hope, right? But he says that if you're dogmatic, then you're part of the old, lesser evolved, religious, superstitious, right, moral objectivist. You need to die. So not only is Salk not a philosopher, which he's trying to do in this book, this is actually a religious philosophical text. It's absolutely nothing to do with science in this book. He's not even a good philosopher, because by his own definitions of who's regressive, people that are dogmatic, he needs to die. But, of course, he doesn't believe that. He believes that the elite need to mutate the RNA of women through all kinds of experimentation, experiment on their eggs, and therefore the cult of death. By the way, he says that there needs to be death education. Everybody needs to be re-educated into this Darwinian cult. He says there needs to be structures in place to re-educate. Like Red Dawn type stuff, re-education camp, but it's not commies. It's like Red Dawn with, mad scientists in your face, right? It's Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, having you strapped down on a table, messing with your junk. That's what this is. That's the world that Jonas Salk wants. He wants Bill Nye and Tyson mutating your junk, and so that your junk gets so small that you can't reproduce. Now, luckily, I don't have to worry about that. That's not going to be a problem on my end. But for what Salk wants, Jonas Salk is a psycho. That's the key here, psychopath. And he talks about so much metaphysics. He even says, yes, I'm talking metaphysics in this book, that by his own definitions of scientism, he's no longer talking science. So what you see from this is that it's admittedly metaphysics and religion, and it's designed to be a death cult, and it's designed to, through all kinds of experiments, I wonder what kinds of experiments the father of inoculations on a mass scale might want to be involved in. I wonder what means he might use. Maybe inoculations. He even says that the inoculations could be a means by which they could engineer evolution or devolution by changing the genetic code and running experiments. That's what he says. All is flux, page 53. However, you'll notice that Salk's position is not flux. You see, all is flux, and so therefore every other position out there is changing and will be false tomorrow. It might be true today, it'll be false tomorrow. Everything's changing. All is flux. Oh, but my position's not. My position's unique. It actually doesn't fall under the strictures of what I say about all positions, right? So it's self-refuting at its most basic level, self-contradictory, but that's okay, because it's not about being logical. For all their talk of logic, it's actually a cult. It's about joining this cult, and if you don't join this cult that has all these, elite Carnegie Mellon funding, Rockefeller funding, et cetera, then the threat is you won't go into the future. But what I want you to see, the point of this is that, number one, why would you trust mass vaccinations? Now babies are supposed to get 60? Come on, that's crazy. That's nuts. Why would you trust the whole idea of mass vaccinations from a guy who writes this book, The Survival of the Wisest, about killing everybody? What? Nobody ever talks about that, by the way. Do they? No, they don't.